Planning to own a dog daycare? You might want to think twice. Not because you shouldn't do it, it's because there's a real gap between what this looks like from the outside and what it actually costs. And that gap is exactly what this video is for. The pitch feels almost too good to be true. Get paid to watch dogs play all day, doing something you'd probably do for free anyway. Dog ownership in America keeps climbing. Pet daycare is a market worth well over $1 billion and growing at nearly 7% a year. Every ingredient for an easy business seems to be there. Part of why demand holds up. A bored dog left alone all day tends to get destructive, and the cost of a chewed-up couch or a stressed, anxious pet often exceeds whatever the daycare would have charged. That math quietly works in the industry's favor. Return-to-office mandates have added another push. Dogs adopted during years of remote work suddenly needed somewhere to go once their owners went back to a commute. And that shift alone has kept demand climbing well past pre-pandemic levels. And yet, the average profit margin across this entire industry sits at just 10 to 25%. So what actually separates the owner clearing $60,000 a year from the one clearing $500,000? That's what we're figuring out today. And it has almost nothing to do with how big the facility is. The first cost, the one tied directly to square footage and safety rules, a real facility runs anywhere from the price of a used car to a small house, and the space itself is legally regulated. A small, home-based setup with 5 to 10 dogs can get running for a modest amount, but it caps your income with it. Owner earnings at that scale typically land between $25,000 and $60,000 a year, which is a side income, not a career. A real commercial facility is a different scale entirely. Total startup capital typically runs $73,000 to $250,000, depending on size and finish level. A 3,000 square foot location alone can land anywhere in that $150,000 to $250,000 range once you count licensing, insurance, and build-out. Add proper insurance, licensing, and a buffer for the unexpected, and most owners are better off planning for the higher end of that range rather than the lower end. And the space itself isn't a free choice. Most regulations require 50 to 75 square feet per dog in a group play setting. You can't legally cram more dogs into a smaller room to save on rent. Insurance is non-negotiable too, given the injury and liability risk that comes with supervising dozens of dogs that don't know each other. Zoning is worth checking before you fall in love with a location. Plenty of cities restrict where an animal facility with this much noise and traffic can operate, and capacity restrictions baked into a lease or a permit can quietly cap your growth long before demand does. All of that gets you the building. It doesn't get you the thing that actually determines whether this makes money. The hidden trap, the one baked into a safety rule most people never think to ask about. You cannot simply add more dogs to make more money, and almost nobody accounts for that before signing a lease. Here's the number that quietly caps this entire business: the staff-to-dog ratio. Industry standard runs 1 staff member for every 10 to 15 dogs, sometimes tighter, around 1 to 8, for facilities marketing premium supervision. Specialized training cohorts can run as tight as 1 staff member to 6 dogs. That's not a suggestion. It's the operational backbone of the entire business. Add 10 more dogs, and you don't just add 10 more collars to watch, you likely need to add another employee. And labor is already the dominant cost in this business, running 40 to 55% of total operating costs, sometimes cited as over half the daily rate you charge. Compare that to a business like a laundromat or a vending route, where the machines do most of the ongoing work. Here, the ratio guarantees a person is watching every single dog, every single hour you're open. There's no automating that away. That means dog daycare doesn't scale the way a lot of other businesses do. You can't just serve more customers with the same staff. The ratio follows you at every size. Then there's the leakage almost nobody budgets for. Facilities relying on manual booking and reminder calls report losing 10 to 25% of revenue to no-shows alone. Add weak rebooking systems, clients who visit once and simply never come back, and a facility can be fully licensed, fully staffed, and still quietly bleeding revenue nobody's tracking. The real engine, the one that has nothing to do with how many dogs you can fit, a smaller facility running full will always beat a bigger one running half empty. So if you can't just scale by adding dogs, where does the real income come from? Utilization, not size. Picture two facilities. One holds 40 dogs but only runs at 60% capacity most days. The other holds 25 dogs and consistently runs at 90%. Run the math, and the smaller facility generates 41% more revenue in the exact same operating footprint, without a single extra square foot of rent. The second lever is stacking services that don't scale one-to-one with that staffing ratio. Boarding, especially around holidays. Grooming. Training add-ons. A loyal daycare customer using the service 8 to 15 days a month is worth somewhere between $1,920 and $9,000 a year. Add boarding and grooming on top of that relationship, and the same customer is worth significantly more without needing a single new client walking through the door. The real money in dog daycare. You can't outbuild the staffing ratio, so the winners don't try to. They fill what they have, and they sell everything around the core service instead of just the service itself. K9 Resorts, a dog boarding and daycare franchise, reports that a location open at least 24 months can average over $1.2 million in annual sales and nearly $400,000 in EBITDA. That's a margin close to 33%, well above the 10 to 25% average across the industry. Worth being honest about the source here. That's a franchise reporting its own performance to attract new franchisees, so treat it as an upper bound, not a guarantee, and verify any specific claims independently before signing anything. Franchising itself is a real trade-off worth naming. You're paying for a proven playbook, training, and brand recognition, and in exchange, a slice of every dollar you earn goes back to the franchisor for as long as you operate, on top of the same staffing ratio every independent owner already deals with. But the gap itself is instructive. The difference between a 33% operator and a 15% operator running the exact same square footage almost never comes down to the building. It comes down to whether every kennel is full and every customer is buying more than just the base daycare rate. So let's run the two real outcomes. The optimistic case. You build a mid-size commercial facility, staff it tightly to the ratio, run automated booking and reminders to kill no-show leakage, and layer boarding and grooming onto your existing customer base from month one. You also treat referrals seriously. In a business built entirely on trust with someone's pet, word of mouth from a happy client closes new customers faster and cheaper than almost any ad campaign could. Occupancy holds near 85 to 90% most months. Owner income lands in the $150,000 to $250,000 range within a couple of years, consistent with what high-performing single-location operators report. The realistic case. You build a facility sized for growth you haven't secured yet, run at 55 to 65% occupancy while marketing catches up, and rely on the base daycare rate without building out boarding or grooming early. Owner income settles into the $60,000 to $90,000 range, solidly middle of the published industry data, but a long way from the number that got you excited about this business in the first place. Same staffing ratio, same square footage rules, same industry. The entire gap between those two outcomes comes down to occupancy discipline and how many services get sold to the customers already walking through the door. So, is it worth it? If you're picturing a business that scales just by getting bigger, that's not how this one works. The staffing ratio makes sure of that. What is true is that this remains one of the more emotionally sustainable businesses on this channel, for someone who genuinely loves the work, with real, well-documented paths to a strong six-figure income. It also rewards a specific kind of discipline that has nothing to do with dogs. The willingness to track occupancy like a hotel manager and treat every daycare customer as a boarding and grooming customer you haven't converted yet. For someone willing to treat occupancy and add-on services as the actual job, not an afterthought to loving dogs, this can become a real, durable business. For someone planning to build big and assume the dogs will show up on their own, the industry average is already sitting there, and it's thinner than the daydream. A bigger building has never once solved a staffing ratio. Remember this: nobody gets rich renting out square footage to dogs. They get rich keeping every square foot of it full, every single day, and selling 3 services to the same loyal customer instead of 1.